Hello and welcome to episode 74 of our Conversations to Connect. Let's Get Real podcast powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm Cyndi ONeill-Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections since 2009. And I'm excited about rolling up our sleeves and discussing neutralizing obstacles through gratitude with the amazing David George Brooke. So welcome, David.
Welcome. Hi, everybody. Great to see you.
And yeah, David's joining us from Renton, right? Renton,
Correct.
Washington.
Correct.
And he spoke at our recent Exceptional Connections networking luncheon on March, I think it was 11th. And
Mhm.
we're excited to be able to have a little bit more time to be able to really talk about gratitude and the power of gratitude. So before we dive into this intriguing conversation, I want to take a moment to introduce David to our listeners who may not know him and his passion for gratitude. So, David George Brooke, known as That Gratitude Guy, is an accomplished speaker, coach, and best-selling author with a career spanning over 25 years. Wow. With over 30 years of corporate management expert experience, including as a former Nordstrom store manager, he has become an expert in gratitude. Brooke is the author of several books, such as That Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal and 6 Word Lessons to Embrace Gratitude. He has delivered over 850 speeches and workshops, including more than 150 virtual presentations in the past 18 months. His expertise has been recognized in publications like Forbes, COSTCO Connection, and the Mercer Island Reporter. As a YouTube influencer, Brooke has created over 2,300 gratitude videos. Wow, David, that's amazing. Reaching thousands, he frequently travels to share his message and resides in Renton, Washington, as we discovered earlier. He's the proud father of his 2 rock star sons. So, welcome, David. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Cyndi. Great to be with you guys again.
Well, I want to, before we jump into this subject and have you really explore gratitude and your topic of neutralizing obstacles through gratitude, I know I just read a intro for those who are listening to this YouTube video after the fact and wanted to know more about you. But I'd love to have you just share, as an opening, some things that you're passionate about in your journey and maybe some, I know you're an avid walker, so maybe some daily rituals or habits that you do to help you to keep that attitude of gratitude.
Absolutely. And I'll start with speaking, you and I were talking offline about walking. And so there's the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual parts of our lives. And this power hour, I'm going to start with that just for a second, because I was just talking about that on another Zoom recording that I made. And what is a power hour? And I think it's so important how you start your day. And I go back and I look at my life of 75 years on the planet, and it's this big roller coaster ride. It's all up and down, up and down, up and down. It's never all up or never all down. So when you're up and everything is going great, that's fantastic. But when you're down, how do you handle that? And that's one of the reasons why last week we did a number of exercises and activities to have little tools to kind of take care of things when when it bottoms out and you're not doing as well. And so, but the power hour is what I came up with about how to start your day. And I think we have to be honest and think about the impact that devices and electronics and tech has had on our life. And all the smartphones, as they've moved to almost a mini computer, well, it is a computer in your hand, to laptops, to desktops, to tablets, to all that kind of thing. So I thought, well, I want to get my life or my day off to a really good start. So I developed this. For me, it takes about 45 minutes. It can take an hour, but I just highly recommend putting together your individualized power hour. And so for me, it starts by getting up. I usually get up about 6:30 or so. And first thing you do is make your bed. That's the dopamine hit. And that's one of the things I guess came from the services where they wanted them to have all these perfectly made beds so they can already feel they've accomplished something, which was really important. So make the bed. I go in and I turn on the latte maker. I have a nice latte maker. Get that warming up, go in and take a shower, shave, get ready, do all that kind of thing. That's probably 10 or 15 minutes. And then I come back and I stretch And because it's a lot easier for me to put on my socks and all those things if I stretch for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then next, I go back and get dressed. And then I come back in my office and I do about a 10 or 15-minute meditation. And then followed that by the world famous, listen to me, that Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal. It's about 5 or 6 minutes. And then pretty much that's everything in that hour or 45 minutes. And then I go get my latte, come in here again, turn on my computer, look at my cell phone. But we become a society that's driven by our cell phones. Walk down any mall or airport or anything, and everybody's got it in front of them and they're glued to it. I'm surprised people aren't walking into traffic more often when they're not paying attention to what's in front of them. But that's okay. They become part of the thing. But make sure you're all physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually set up for the day of success. And so that's kind of the power hour. And the neutralizing obstacles through gratitude, it's just, again, for being on this planet this long, I fortunately, I guess I'd say unfortunately, learned a lot of lessons growing up where my mother was manic depressive and she did something which, as a parent to two sons, Connor is 30, Kyle is 40, and my rock star sons is, I call them. And she would like threaten suicide to me when I was growing up. What kind of parent does that? And she was a good mom, but you don't need me anymore. I'm going to take these sleeping pills. And I got God. And then my parents got divorced, and my father unfortunately took his own life. And I lost some friends in high school and Vietnam. And I just thought, wow, people have said to me, "Oh, you've had a tough life." I think it's all relative. I think there's people that have had tougher or easier, whatever it might be. The point being is we all have challenging lives. So how do we manage that, and how do we neutralize those obstacles? And along the way, it wasn't until I was about 30 that I found this gratitude and how much of a difference it made in terms of your attitude, an attitude of gratitude, a gratitude mindset. And it's just a better way to live. And I say this a lot because I do usually a couple talks a week. And so I have to remember which place I said which thing to, but this idea that two people walk into a hospital with the same disease and the positive attitude lives and the negative attitude dies. And it's been proven over and over again. And so the positive attitude relates to gratitude, and they're kind of synonymous. And it's never been a better line than the glass is half full. And some people, my father saw the glass half empty. He's the one I'd say, good morning. He'd go, what's good about it? And I said, it's a sunny day. He goes, it's going to rain tomorrow. And I never understood that. So really, really important. So the whole concept that I try to get across on my videos and in person and on Zoom, and I do work for Boeing, it's on Cisco WebEx and this kind of thing, is what those of you that were there last week experienced is a lot of little exercises that are designed to give you that little pick-me-up, if you will, when you're not feeling good and when you're on the down part of the roller coaster. And one of the things, I'm trying to think if I did it last week, but it's sitting right over, I think I did, the top 100 most memorable events of my life. And I have people write down the top 10 that they've had the most memorable events of your life: kids, vacations, marriages, trips, travel, jobs, whatever it might be. What are the most memorable events of your life? And then I have them expand it to top 25, top 50, or top 100, depending on how many you want to write down. So for me, even being on the planet all this time, it's right there, and I have them printed up and I put it on a bulletin board. It says top 100 most memorable events of my life. And it just goes right down the list. Number 1 is Connor. Number 2 is Kyle. Number 3, speaking to 10,000 soldiers, being a national champion hydroplane driver, learning how to fly, having an airplane. I mean, I just go through all these things. And if you put that, then I tell people, put it on a piece of paper and then put it in order of the most memorable all the way down. And mine goes all the way down to 100. And that's just an example of something that's a tool that you're having a tough day. You go look at that and you'll get over your case of comparisonitis, because we all do it, whether we like it or not. Oh, better house, better car, better husband, better wife, better job, more money. It's ridiculous. And we do it all the time. And I think one of the worst offenders of that is social media. Oh my Lord. I mean, like, look what I'm doing. Look at me, me, me. And then I noticed somebody pointed out to one acquaintance we knew, and they had a picture at the beach. And 6 months later, they go, we're back at the beach again. It was the same picture. Oh, I see. You just planned to put the pictures again, pretended you were there again, because you couldn't have
Oops.
reframed that picture. So a lot of it, that's why the title, Neutralizing Obstacles Through Gratitude, is that's what I'm trying to help people do, is get through those challenges of life.
Oh boy. Oh, that's a funny one. They got caught on that one.
Yeah.
But you know what? I love what you were talking about. I'm going to do this, making a list of the most memorable events in your life.
Yeah.
And when I just, thinking about it right now organically, I'm like, okay, getting married, of course, having children, you know, just raising your children, homeschooling, different times. And then you think about, wow, some of those times are really hard. Like giving birth was not a fun thing,
Right.
but it's one of those things that's the top, you know, memorable events in my life is having my three children and being able to give birth to them and raise them. And again, that wasn't easy either.
Hmm.
There were times where it's like, oh God, how am I going to make it through this? But that it's just it reminds me of a book I read to my kids. I'd love to get your perspective on this. It's kind of interesting. And they were teaching a lesson to children about hard times, going through hard times. We all have hard times. Look back at your life and you see all the hard times. And there was this little solution to it. Like whenever it's like a ball of yarn, and think of this big ball of yarn, and this is your life. And every time you go through a hard time, you just pull on that yarn, and you'll just be on the other side of whatever that hardship
Hmm.
was. And just do that. And so, in this story, the main character would be just like, oh, here's something hard. Pull the string. Then they're at the end of their life and they're like, oh, I would do anything to have all those moments that I, just breezed right through. All those moments that they breezed right through were hard moments. And that's what makes life, right? The good, the bad,
Yeah.
the ugly. Here we are. Every moment's beautiful. In the moment, it's not always easy, but gratitude, I think really, if you have a heart of gratitude, you're not going to pull the string,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I think I've said many times in my next life, I want to be a psychologist. I got a business degree from the University of Washington. I just find people fascinating. And I especially like the nature versus nurture, because again, I had possibly the most negative person I ever met was my own father. My mom was very positive, even though she had mental health issues. But how do we decide which way we look at that glass half full or half empty? And so that's why I like those exercises. And the one when I said you can go from one of three things, top 25, top 50, or top 100, you pick how many you want to do. But it's just, I go down and look through some of these things. And I think where I'm particularly vulnerable to that is I'll look at, say, on YouTube, I have all these videos and I'll see somebody who has 10 times more subscribers or 10 times more videos or whatever it is. And I start thinking, gosh, I'm not really doing much. Look how much they're doing. And that's where the comparisonitis thing comes in. And if I ever feel that way, I go back and look at that list and it completely changes my attitude. And I think, how many things have I done? And so, somebody once said a great line to me is, and you think about the friends and relatives we have in our lives, and they said, a good friend sings back your song to you when you've forgotten your lyrics. And
Hmm.
I just thought that was such a great line because I had it happen to me just yesterday on a Zoom call. A friend I met through a group out of Florida, but he happens to be in Mercer Island. And we were talking. He said, David, I can't believe you've done XYZ. And God, I just felt so good after the call. And I go, yeah, well, then you see how it is. So that's why that relationship you have with yourself and the person brushing your teeth is so important. If you can really get that solid, and that's why that exercise. And then when we did the UR card last week, and then what you're grateful for and how your number changes, those are all again designed to give you that little pick me up. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. And just have that little pick me up where it gets you back because we all get derailed from time to time. And the important thing is to get back on the track again. So those things can really make a difference.
They can. And comparisonitis. I
Yeah,
haven't quite heard it that way, but that's great. Because we do. If that's a slippery slope there. But if you're
absolutely.
grateful for what you have, what is your saying here? You have enough, right?
Gratitude turns what you have into enough. Yeah,
Gratitude
it's
turns what
really
you have
true.
into enough, and that's so true. So what I want to ask you is, what has been your best coping mechanism to deal with, the ups and downs in life? And I obviously, the context here is gratitude, but how would you be able to share that with somebody who wants to use it as their anchor, in life when as things, the good and the bad times?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's a question I've asked a lot, especially when my wife died September 29th, 1998. So that's been 25 years, and the boys were 4 and 14. And then I ended up raising them myself. And I'd say, so people would tell me about things they went through. And I love that question. What's your best coping mechanism? Because people go, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear it." They try to be nice and empathetic, and it's true. But what I want to know is what helped you get through that time, because it can be friends, it can be work, it can be books, it can be different things. But for me, and this is going to sound, I wouldn't say necessarily obvious, but this has been my number one coping mechanism, because I do not miss a day. I mean, I've got these last about 4 months, I think, and 90 days or 4 months, something like that. So I probably have 60 or 70 of these now. I don't know how many it is. They're behind me on a shelf. And then I put the date on the side, the gratitude journal. And every single morning you put your pen to paper, and it kind of cues you up, and it says day and date and your daily number, which we did last week at the exceptional connections. And then it has 2 lines for current events, so you don't need a diary, so you can write what's going on. And then it prompts you 6 or 7 things that you're grateful for. And then the highlight of your day. Again, we did that last week. What was the best thing that happened yesterday? And then on the right-hand side is your gratitude intentions. And that's where you write what you're grateful for that hasn't even happened yet, which can kind of program your brain, which is really cool. But the thing that makes it so neat is that the saying in the front of the book says, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. And it's just interesting to write it down. I think I even said this last week, Cyndi. I'm sure it was in my gratitude journal the next day. I'm so grateful to Cyndi ONeill-Dady for inviting me to Exceptional Connections. And it's
Oh,
right there in the highlight of my day, because I always write in the morning. So when I write in the morning, it's everything from the day before, because some people write at night and that will be from the day. But anyway, and it just makes a difference. And so I'm always, I wouldn't say hesitant to mention it, but I'm a pretty positive person. But boy, when I hit the dumps or get down or get really negative or depressed or something once a month or every few weeks or whatever it might be, I always do the same thing. I'll go back and read what I wrote this morning, and it gets me back on track, because I kind of forgot. And that's why that writing is how it plants in your brain. So but get back to that question. It's such a great question. I've had people say music. I've had people say exercise. I've had them say get together with close friends. And some people talk, of course, music is a big one. Certain kinds of music are really good for people. I know it's helped me. I want to listen to a certain song or types of songs. But I think it's just such a great question because, again, back to this roller coaster ride we all go through it. Nobody escapes it. And so, what is your best coping mechanism? I love to ask that because it gets so many good answers.
I just posted some of your networking nuggets in the chat for
Mm,
anybody who wants to grab those because they're just beautiful. And you know, I want to make sure people who are listening to this also know what you were referring to. You kind of referenced it at the end, but you were holding up your book, The Gratitude Journal,
hmm.
and referencing, that writing things down. There's a lot of power in that.
Right,
When I was in college, I would always tell people, my brain is in my hand. I would take copious notes, and often I didn't even go back and look at my notebook. I mean, unless, of course, just studying for a test. But it was just comforting to know that, I don't know, there's something really powerful about putting things on a piece of paper, handwriting them. Nowadays, it's easy to be able to create something, a document or what have you, on the internet and do a Word doc or a Google Doc because you can edit it so much easier.
right.
Um, but there's something very powerful about actually writing words down on paper. And I think that your journal, really shows the power of that, right?
Well, absolutely. And I was thinking, I just made a note. I'm going to research that a little bit and Google it about some of the scientific aspects of it. I say it always plants it that much better in your brain. But I experimented a few years ago back with an app, and you press it in. I am so grateful to Cyndi for inviting me to Exceptional Connections. And it would type it. It would just type it. Like, I mean, there's all this voice to
Mhm.
talk, all the incredible technology that's around today, but it's not the same. It's just there's something about, again, that, and that's why I'm going to research that a little bit, but the pen and the paper and the way it plants it, it just puts it in your brain a little more solidly, for lack of a better word. And that's really what you want. It's like studying for a test. How are you going to know all the answers to the test if you didn't really study them and get them in your brain? So when you went to take the test, you remembered everything that there was, and writing it down seems to make such a big difference with that. So very powerful.
It does, because I mean, I won't pretend to say I have photographic memory. I know my ex-husband did, one my son's does, but there is something about, I can remember where I wrote something on a page. You know what I mean? You're able to extract that information and access it when you put pen to paper. I would
Right.
love to hear studies on that too. I think that would be very
Yeah, I'm going to
fascinating.
look into that.
Yeah, because I was thinking about authors, and we've got another author on our call here today. Marley, you can chime in later, but I'm wondering, like, when you wrote your book, when she wrote her book, did you write it on a notepad, or did you write it on a computer? Because that's something, the creative experience, and it's not only remembering things, but it's also that creative experience. I'm just wondering, that's a very curious question, um, and how that plays into it as well.
Yeah, I'd like to know that. Marley, how did you do that? What worked best for you?
Well, my book, I started when I was a senior in college. So I I drummed it out on a typewriter originally.
Very good book.
So much of it is, yeah, so much of it is memoir and came from journals. And I have a bookcase full of, I don't know, maybe 100 journals over the years, and they were all handwritten. And I do think there's something powerful about cursive, and that's why they need to bring that back into the schools, because it's an expression. It gets the flow going. So while I wrote the book on my computer, so many of the parts of it were handwritten.
And you said something very interesting. Cursive is like a new language for the young kids. A lot
Yes.
of them don't know how to read cursive. It's like, if you want a secret code, just write it in handwriting.
I heard the thing where grandmother said to her grandchild, "Now you need to learn cursive." And the reason was because I think she'd put a check or something in a book, and he had to open it and read that, no, she said, when you go to the lawyers, it's going to be in cursive and you've got to read it or you won't get it.
Oh, wow, that's a great incentive. Well, this is such a lovely conversation that normally we wait a little longer to open the conversation to others. And so I just want to act on a prompting right now, because thank you for sharing, Marley. Feel free to unmute yourself and let's have a conversation about gratitude, because gratitude is really personal, and it's also one of what do they call it? One of the most spiritual concepts there is gratitude. So feel free to unmute yourself. We'll just keep talking until anybody has and again, this is not just questions. This is also like your perspective. Tina.
Oh, hi. Nice to meet you, David.
Nice to meet you, Tina.
So unfortunately, I was in New York and you were at Exceptional Connections, but I love gratitude. I really do. And I do what Bob Proctor said, 10 every morning. I get up. I'm a really early girl, so I'm up at 4, but I love that time. And I write 10 gratitude of what I'm grateful for in my life right now. And then I send loving thoughts to 3 people who really annoy me. And then 5 minutes on my day. And that's what Bob Proctor said. If you do those 3 things, your day goes really well. And it's very true. But I also at night do just 3 gratitude in my mind of the 3 highlights of the day that made my day amazing.
Nice.
And that makes me sleep better. For some reason, that just those three in my mind, if I talk to my husband, he goes, "Oh, really? You and gratitude?" But if I do it in my mind, I sleep better. And, I've tried it a couple of times not doing it, and I'm a cranky sleeper. But if I do that, so I love gratitude. Would you say it's more related to frequency or vibrations?
Boy, probably both. I think that what you just said, Tina, about the sleeping better, and then you didn't, and you didn't sleep as well, and then you do, shows how the whole thing is kind of, I think it's all interwoven, and it's sort of mental, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual in many ways as well. But I think that it's just so many of the science things talk about all the different things that happen, and people are healthier, and they enhance their positive emotions, and they don't do toxic emotions like envy and jealousy and anger and things like that. And so it's all kind of woven. I just think it's so neat because it's a choice that people make, and I'm still surprised people that don't make a choice about it. One of the things we did last week is the association evaluator, where I have people write down the names of 0, 1, or 2 people you should disassociate with. And they're not, because it's going to rub off on you. So it's not good to have negativity around you. And then the other extreme is one in the middle, but the other one is 0, 1, or 2 people you should enhance your relationship with. And you just, you spend an hour and a half with them at coffee, and you go, and it feels like you were there 10 minutes. And so you're exchanging that, and it's like, just that back and forth. I love the tennis match analogy. It's back and forth. So I just think one of the things, I was shooting a video yesterday, and one of the questions I had was, can you make a negative person into a positive person? And I don't know if you can. I think that, I've said many times, I'll be your training wheels, but I'm not going to pedal your bike. I mean, the person has to be willing to want to change. And there's some people that, sadly, I just think they're not willing to change, or they're just negative people. So I just think it's really fun when you get it and you see the benefits of it. And I think another thing that was important for me, as I said, you heard in the intro, I manage these big stores. And so I came to the conclusion that managing 400 or 500 people in a store and having my 2 sons both require the number one skill in both cases is you have to set a good example. And you can't go, I don't want to see you smoking, but you're puffing away or whatever. It just doesn't work very well. So it's just fun to set an example and see how many people understand and follow you.
Yeah. And also that with the brain, I found out in my 40s that I was extremely dyslexic. So I was told that when I write everything. And I'm writing a couple of books at the moment. Everything is handwritten and then presented in different formats. But it's the handwriting of the cursive, especially for a dyslexic. When you finish that word, your brain knows that's one word.
Oh, wow.
And then you go on to the next word. And then for a dyslexic person, if you go on a blackboard and do the same writing, it goes into your cerebellum so deep that it's something that you always remember.
Wow.
So it's the writing, and especially it's the cursive is also the chalk on the blackboard. You will always remember it, and that's a really great thing for dyslexic people.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I never knew that. That's very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I hope cursive makes a comeback.
Me too.
Wow, that's beautiful. That ties in what we were talking about earlier. I hadn't realized that. So is there a distinction between writing cursive on a piece of paper versus writing cursive on a chalkboard? I didn't hear.
Yeah, it's for dyslexic. If you're dyslexic, you'll absorb it better because you've got the roughness of the chalk and the tactile that really helps your brain remember.
Interesting.
But normally it's just write cursive or write and then on paper, and your brain will remember it so much better.
So in the old days when they had chalkboards and teachers, if a student misbehaved, they had to go to front of the room and write something 1,000 times or whatever, 100 times. They were really getting that ingrained, weren't they?
They were.
Oh, I love that. So, David, break down gratitude for us and the power of it, because we talk about how it's one of the highest spiritual principles, and how writing things down, how it really gets into our brain. And but there's also a piece I'm thinking, I guess, more about health right now. So when you're not feeling your best, when you're not healthy, there's a word called disease. And if we break down the word disease, it's dis-ease, meaning our body, something about us is not at ease. And I really feel like it might seem like a separate conversation than gratitude, but I feel like gratitude is such a it's a pill that we take that makes us healthy, and it's and helps us on our health journey. So can you share about that? Is that something that resonates with you?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you think about the different elements of our life. And I just mentioned the association evaluate who you're hanging out with. And so I think when you're around negative people, it's hard to maintain a gratitude attitude because they're going to want to bring you down and keep you down to their level. People want to have people that are miserable with them. I never smoked or drank or anything, but I had friends of mine that smoked or drank or did things, and then they'd quit, and they'd have to get a whole new group of friends because all the other friends wanted them to smoke with them or do whatever they were doing. But I think in your personal life, you think about the relationship you have with the people in your immediate family, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, kids, whatever, and how's the relationship you have with them as far as what's the attitude of gratitude. And then, of course, at work, where you're kind of forced to be, I didn't mention this on the association evaluation, but at work is a good example where there's times you should think about 0 or 1 or 2 people you should limit your associations with. And those are usually people at work where you can't get away from them because they happen to sit in the desk next to you, or a family member who you don't get along with. You're going to see him at the family get together on Sunday or whatever. And so the work thing is really important as well as personal, because again, you're known by the company you keep. And, it's interesting. That's why I think the associations, I think it's important to look at them once or twice a year to really reevaluate, because it can really impact you. And there's people that I have that want to get together with me to do a walk or do a coffee or whatever it might be. And I don't do it anymore because I walked away from it. And so there's different elements in terms of breaking down into chunks. The gratitude journal is a huge piece of it, as we've been saying, because the thing about it, if you write about it, it empowers you. And so that's really important. The people that you hang out with, and then how you take care of yourself too. And I think I've always loved the line, if you want to change your life, change your life. And I think about so many people in my life that have said, well, I want to do this, but they never do it. And that's why I like that line about I'll be your training wheels, but I'm not going to pedal your bike. You have to do a big portion. And there's a lot of people that just want to have you do the work for them. And it's never going to resonate. It's never going to get back to this planted in your brain like the actual writing on the paper does. So I think it's sort of looking at those 4 or 5 big aspects of your life, your personal relationship you have. How do you feel about yourself, and are you grateful for everything you have? And that's where the gratitude journal comes in. And then your personal life with acquaintances or relatives or whoever, your work life, your social life. I have a couple of friends. One comes to mind that is always complaining about this friend that she has. And I just, why do you hang out with her? Why do you even talk to her? All you do is say, well, I talked to her so-and-so, and now I'm this. And so I think it's just the choices that you make in those big chunks of life. And as I said, physical, mental, and then work, personal, family, relationships, children, all those different places. And I still think back to the cigarette example, the best way you can show yourself in this world, in this case with gratitude, is the same thing you show everybody else. And that's the example you set. So if you're, that's just was such a big difference for me. In fact, I was fascinated by, I think that was on a video today. I was thinking they were talking about that, where I would meet people at Lowe's and at Nordstrom and stuff. And I'd say, don't you want to be a store manager? And they would go, no, I don't want that responsibility. 90% of the people weren't interested. Don't you want to aspire to this and it's really fun, and you manage all these people and you make a lot of money and you can fly around in corporate jets or whatever the example was. And no, I would never want that much responsibility. And so I thought, wow. So I think when you're sort of again, back to the nature versus nurture, I'm fascinated by that, because how much of it is your environment and how much of it you're born with. And I think my father, as an example, was, as I mentioned, very negative. I'm very positive, and I wasn't going to let that get him down and get me down. And I know I said this last week, but I just still, it left such an impression on me. I was 18 years old, and I saw this sign in the university bookstore men's shop where I was working at the University of Washington, and it said, "You meet respectable people where respectable people gather. If you're looking to find mountain trout, don't go fishing in a herring barrel." Just, I thought it was hilarious because it's so true. I mean, what do you expect? If you want to get mountain trout, don't go there. So hang out. So think about who you hang out with. And so I think it cuts across every aspect of our lives. And I think one of the best things, I got the chance to talk to a lot of people last week at Exceptional Connections. Marley was one of them, and a number of others. And it's just, it's the example you said, and it's just, you get to decide. And that's why I love this thing about this, the person you see brushing your teeth. And I tell some people, your faith can be number one. That's fine. But at or near the top should be the relationship you have with yourself. And if you can create a good one, it just, everything works better, and it's just like the ultimate Teflon or the ultimate armor for the barbs, the negative gamma rays that come and try to shoot us down. Because, it's one of the things I've noticed is too, my sister and my brother both have businesses. And so we all commiserate about this. And I'll get like 97 comments out of 100 that are positive. So why do I focus on the 3 that are negative? What's up with that? So you can't please everybody, but the best thing you do is set a good example. So I think if you just have gratitude in all parts of your life, it just can't help but roll off to other people.
That ratio is very interesting because it's true. You can have so many people give you positive affirmation and comments and, be grateful. And then you get, let's say out of 100, 3 negative, and that's what we focus on. That's what our brain focuses on. And so to be able to flip the switch and be able to, really focus on the things that we are grateful for. And there's so many things in everybody's life. There's always something to be grateful for, right?
Right.
But there's a pull, I think, in the spiritual towards those things that aren't so, savory. Hey, what I'm thinking about here is we had our guest speaker, I think I mentioned to you in February, Brenda Reese. She spoke about the power of forgiveness. And, it was really intentional on my part to schedule speakers who were teaching soft skills, who were teaching us, coping mechanisms for this crazy world we live in. And it just occurred to me that forgiveness and gratitude, although people look at them and say, yes, that's important, there's barriers. They're difficult to be able to really, and you mentioned it, and Tina mentioned it too, in one of her rituals and practices is, what did she say, to 3 people? How did you say that,
who
Tina?
annoy you. 3
3
people.
people.
Yeah, well, it's 3 people. The Dalai Lama says your 3 oh my God, what do you call them? I'll think of it in just a moment.
So are you sending happy thoughts to those 3 people?
Yeah. Even so that you don't, and they annoy you.
Yeah.
If you change your thought process about them
Towards them.
You see, I did this with one of the people in my BNI, and I went back to the BNI the following month, and I looked at this certain person, and he looked totally different to me. And I go, oh my God, this shit really works.
Well, it's like a hook. It's a hook, right? And then when we release that, when we bless them, when we pray for them, when we think good thoughts, then we don't have that negative connection with them. It is quite miraculous and a beautiful thing. So that's why I think that these spiritual principles of forgiveness and gratitude are so important to remember, so important to understand how to navigate.
Cyndi, do you remember, you told me that, you said Brenda Reese was her name?
Yes.
Was there one, because I was not there, but I'm fascinated by that subject as well. Were there 1 or 2 takeaways that she kind of had that were really key to forgiveness?
I've heard her many times, and she really comes from a perspective very similar to yours, that you have to forgive yourself first.
Yeah.
First and foremost. And then just a lot of the things that we've heard over the years, that forgiveness is a pill that you take thinking you're going to hurt the other person and you hurt yourself. And so she comes at it from, and guys, feel free to chime in, but Brenda comes at it from a very different perspectives in terms of, and again, just like you with gratitude, how, you're forgiving yourself, you're forgiving your family members, you're forgiving your work people, they're people, right? They're people that there's a perception that they've done you wrong, and they may not even understand what they've done. It's what we've made it mean. Some people say things and we make it mean things. So Kim and Brian are on the line here, and that's part of a landmark education. We are meaning making machines as humans. And so I'm not sure if I'm really reflecting Brenda's perspective as much as what comes to mind for me is we have to remember that we're part of that equation too. We need to, if somebody has done us wrong, we may have made it mean something that they hadn't intended. And so we need to unwind that as well.
Cyndi, can I jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely. Please, everybody
I
feel
don't know,
free.
David, were you given a copy of the Mill Creek View when you came to Exceptional Connections?
I
Was
don't,
it? I don't think so.
Nicole, it's her publication.
The reason I ask is because Brenda has an article in there, and I just happen to have it sitting here by me. I just
wow.
read it yesterday. But just kind of the bullet points are that forgiveness is a choice we make. It transforms communities. It fosters trust. It enhances productivity and sparks creativity. It's a leadership superpower. And I think, well, I don't know if Nicole has it up yet, but if you go to the Mill Creek View, her online, you should be able to read it online if she's got it.
Great, thank you.
But she has 5 steps to build a forgiving culture. Number 1, lead by example, which is exactly what you've been talking about. Number 2 is address conflicts quickly. Use the 48-hour rule. Number 3 is encourage open communication. Number 4 is celebrate forgiveness in action, which is that'd be the gratitude piece too there. Mm-hmm. And the 5th one is letting go. Practice letting go.
Oh, those are really good.
Yeah. And while I have the floor here for a minute, I just want to say thank you. We spent 3 days with our daughter and 2 of her children at our cabin, and I'm doing this through the house cleaning thing. One of the gals in the group has really inspired me. And so I'm in my office. I found a journal that I've never used. It's pink. It's kind of fluffy and has a clasp. And I'm like, I'm not a pink girl. So I thought I'm going to give this to my little 10-year-old granddaughter and just teach her how to write gratitudes while we're at the cabin. So I gave it to her, in the 2 nights we wrote our gratitudes out. And then came home, and I was over at their house a couple of days later, and she came running to me, Grandma, look it, I've been writing in my gratitude journal. And she'd also been drawing pictures. So I'm going to continue to encourage her, because she is one that always has a joyful heart. And it's great to be able to capture that.
That's really cool. Get them started early. That's fantastic.
Yeah, get them started. And one other thing, you said, is it nature or is it nurture? And my father was one of 6 children. The 4th, there are 5 daughters and my dad. The 4th daughter, I can never remember anything positive that aunt ever said. But my dad, he was Mr. Positivity. I mean, he may not have had 2 nickels to rub together, but he would sing this little song, I'm richer than a millionaire. I mean, he was total positivity. And I'm like, they grew up in the same home, had the same set of parents, Why? I pondered that myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. I know I wanted to be, I don't think I told it last week, but I was 19 years old and I did a talk at a high school about how to be successful. And I went and got in my car. It was 1969. And I thought, that's what I want to be someday, as a motivational speaker. And it took me 45 years till 2013 to get the guts to walk away from the career and all that kind of stuff to become a speaker. And so, I think sometimes it's a calling that we have. And so the difference between a brother and a sister, who knows? I mean, that seems like the wiring just must be haywire or something, to have somebody have such positive examples as parents, back to this thing, leading by example. And yet, how can somebody be so negative? We've all known people like that. And I just think, wow. In fact, sometimes when I get away from those people, I just end up feeling sorry for them. I just think, what a sad way to look at life, where everything sucks and everything's terrible. And it's just, gee, not to mention it shortens your life too.
Thank you, Marley, for doing such a great job in giving a overview of what Brenda shared on that article. And I did put it in the chat, BrendaReeseCoaching.com, David, to learn more about Brenda.
Oh, nice.
And does podcasts as well. I think you'll really enjoy her podcast. One of the things, as I was looking at her website, and it reminded me that it's very applicable to gratitude as well, is the power of positive affirmations. So thinking good things about other people, like Tina mentioned, and you mentioned, limiting negative people from your life. But one of the things you started with is it starts here. It starts with, ourselves, and be able to be grateful and fill our own cup first. And so I was looking at some of the affirmations she had. I am confident, I am worthy, I am kind, I am successful, I am enough, I am joyful, I am peaceful, I am lovable, and I deserve abundance in my life. And so all of those, after reading those, it's like, I need to make that part of my ritual, Just being able to be grounded in who we are, in the truth, is so powerful, because when you really think about the lies that are out there that we believe and we hear, those are the things that pull us down. They're not true. And if we could ground ourselves in what's true, and you actually did that in your little exercise with your little 3x5 card that you handed out. You gave us a few minutes to, who are you? You are, and then write the different affirmations. So there's something really magical about affirmations that I think, it seems simple. It seems like, oh yeah, right. But it grounds us in the truth.
Yeah. So true. And I think, to me, I like to be transparent. It's just, we all come across people that are kind of full of baloney, but I will tell you, the forgiveness piece for me, and I just clicked on that link. Thank you for sending that. Without question, the biggest level of forgiveness I have to have is for myself, because I can just beat myself up like a lot of us can. What were you thinking? In fact, I used to think that's going to be the title of my book someday. What were you thinking? Oh my God. And it's like, I thought it was a decently intelligent person. Why did you make decision X? I don't know. Don't talk about it. Let's move on to something else. But it's very powerful to be able to forgive yourself.
It is. And I just sent the link for the podcast she does as well. And David, you do podcasts as well.
Yeah. Well, I used to. The one I have myself, I don't anymore. I did about 70 or 80 over the course of 2 years, a couple of years ago. And then I just decided to go in a different direction. But I really enjoy doing them, because you get to ask all the right kind of questions, and you get the follow-up questions and things like that. And it always kind of made me laugh, because people would say, as my guests, and as I say, 70 or 80 podcasts, well, can you send me a list of the questions? I go, no, I'm not going to send you a list of the questions. I'm going to ask you a question. And when you answer it, I'm going to have 10 more questions based on what you just said. So I don't need to get any list of questions or whatever. So, but I really enjoyed it.
Well, you were good at it, because you actually, I was honored to be on your podcast, and you're very good at just really digging down and finding out about people. And what I love about you is you're curious.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, we've got 10 minutes here. So for anybody who's on the line, if you have any questions, you want to talk about a subject that we've talked about, or even something that we haven't talked about. This is a great opportunity to be able to share. But until then, until I see somebody unmute themselves, David, share with us a little bit about your how walking has been such a wonderful exercise that you do daily for your health, for your mental outlook, and how before this call, you and I were talking about how time flies when you listen to podcasts and listen to just positive information that others are sharing.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it was kind of born out of the phoenix out of the fire or whatever, because losing my mom and dad at a pretty young age in my 20s, and then my wife when she was 38, and then just a lot of friends. And now in the last couple of years, I've lost so many friends that barely made it to 50 or 60, and now we're all in our 70s and things. And so I just remember thinking that you want to max out, and especially having, at least for me, having kids, I want to see what Kyle and Connor do with their lives. And as I mentioned, Connor's about to get married in 3 weeks and got a lovely gal he's met and went to school with in San Diego, and they're getting married on April 4th. And so to me, it was about deciding on the quality of life. And so I read a lot of these books about longevity and quality of life, and almost every single one of them, they have 5 or 6 tips, but virtually every single one of them, the first thing they say is exercise. And they have all the little sayings, use it or lose it, and this kind of thing, that it's so important to keep your body. And even I even got to the point where they say, well, here's what happens with people that are not exercising. As they get older, their legs are not as strong, because obviously exercising and walking is a great way to strengthen your legs. The person would fall down, break their hip, and then go in the hospital and never come home again. And then, so it's because if they just could have stayed upright. So all those things, the gallon of water every single day, the eating healthy. I'm a big believer in supplements. Some people aren't. The smoothie that I have with the different ingredients in it, which are all like chia seeds and different things like that. And then the walking. And then the reason I brought up the thing about the book is because I just happen to have this path that goes down from the DMAC Center by the Seahawks to Renton Airfield and back, and it's about 7 miles. And so, but I thought it takes 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes. But having Audible and the AirPods is just so cool, because I get so engrossed into this book, I don't even think about the fact I'm walking. And I just can't wait till the next chapter or whatever it might be. So there's enough conventional wisdom out there about, again, the use it or lose it and taking care of yourself. And I don't know what's more important, physical or mental, because one without the other isn't very good. So they both, and that's one of the reasons, Cyndi, you and I were talking about offline before we started about, I don't like the word work, but I'm never going to stop working, because somebody once said, oh, you're doing your zone of genius or something like that. And I think that's a bit much, but I just like to help people, and it's just really neat. So I think when you work longer, and I didn't say this earlier, because you said several years that people would retire and die. I had a couple of friends worked at Boeing, and they talked about this all the time. Somebody worked there 30, 40, 50 years, and they'd retire, and like 3 months later, they'd be dead. Like 3 months, not even 3 years. And they'd have a bulletin board where they'd have the notice of retirement, Fred Jones, left wing assembly, and then the piece of yarn, and it'd be the obituary 3 or 4 months later. So I just believe so much in health. And then on a lot of the books I've read too, they talk about not only longevity, but the quality of life while you're living that way. If you live to 80 or 90, but you're in bed for 20 years, that's not a very good quality of life. So what do you want to do with that? So as Simon Sinek said in his great book about the power of why, you just have to have a big enough why. And whether it's your own health or your kids or grandkids, or the passion that you have with what you do for work or all that kind of stuff, it's just neat to find the things that can really power you to do those things. Because I look back on it now, and I'm really glad that I took good care of myself. And a lot of my friends that died, and I'll say this and wrap up, too much information, but a couple of them just died of frying their kidneys and frying their livers, and they just drank too much, and they just died in their 50s, 60s. Like, wow, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Can't you just like not drink, But so it's a choice we make. And it's the same thing with gratitude, because one of the things I said that I don't think I said this last week, but with this gratitude journal, so I have these friends of mine, these fraternity brothers, and they call me when they want some motivation. I've known them for 50 years. Well, and so now I don't give them the motivation anymore. I go, have you written in your gratitude journal yet? And they go, no. And so then on the phone, I just hang up on them. I just hit the off button, and they call back like 30 seconds later and they go, I think we got cut off. No, we didn't. No, I hung up on you. Go write in your gratitude journal, then call me. Gosh, and that's where back to I'll be the training wheels
Oh
without
my
the bike.
gosh.
So, you got to be responsible for your own life. And it's great to get role models and have people that you aspire to be like. And that's in a case where finding somebody that's getting the results, find somebody that's getting the results you want to get, and then do what they do.
Well, that's tough love there.
Yeah.
I love it. Your sharing reminds me, and just as we close up here, I want you to be thinking about closing comments that you want to leave, parting comments you want to leave our listeners with. But where I get most epiphanies is to go out and dig in the dirt. Go in my garden, right? That's where I'm grounded. That's where I really hear from God. That's where I get my best ideas. That's where I feel, the most peace. And I was out there the other day, and it wasn't easy fun. It was like right now it's cleanup time in the garden. So it's like really just getting in there and cleaning the leaves and putting things back just so I can start a garden in a couple of months. But I was thinking about my dad, and my dad is 93. And I was thinking, because they talk about how old do you want to be? And we often think about age like, well, I don't know when my time's coming. Um, but I've been listening to these just podcasts lately that are talking about claim your destiny, claim your age. And so I was like, okay, well, how long do I want to live? What do I need to do to get to that age, right? And then I'm just going to skip and I'm going to talk about my dad. So my dad's 93, and a couple of years ago when he was 90, we celebrated his birthday. He lives in Florida, and he sat around with all the grandkids and the kids, and we're like, Dad, and he can't hear very well, but Dad, share some wisdom from your life lived. And he said, be careful what you ask for. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean, Dad? He's like, well, I was praying and I was asking that I would live a long life. What I forgot to do is ask for a healthy long life,
Oh,
because he
interesting.
has some health challenges.
Wow.
And so, walking, taking care of your health, that's part of the equation. We want to live a long life, but I would rather live a shorter life that's healthy than, 100 and whatever years old and be in a wheelchair. But there's things we can do today, whether it's forgiveness, for our spiritual health, gratitude, which I think they're both actually spiritual and physical, right? They contribute to both of our well-being. So anyway, I'd love to hear your take on that, because that was my epiphany in the garden the other day, is to really learn from what my dad said. Yes, I want a long life, but I also want a healthy, productive life. I don't want to be experience dis-ease in my body.
Right. Oh, I like that, thinking it all the way through. And I would actually just segue right into a final thought I have about all this. And we've talked about the gratitude journal. I mentioned exercise and getting in good shape and taking care of yourself and making a difference in people's lives. And, if you want to help yourself, help other people, and all those kinds of things. And what I always tend to close in a lot of cases with is this idea of just do something. And I think it's better to do less than you hope for than nothing at all. So I will tell people, write at least one word in a gratitude journal. If you can't walk a mile, walk a block, and then maybe the next day or the next week, you can walk 2 blocks. So whatever it is, send that note to the person about the forgiveness. I like that when Tina was talking about that, or forgiving them, or whatever it might be, somebody you don't like, any of those things, but do something. And so many people, and that's why in coaching people, which I love doing, but I've learned to not I've learned to be pretty selective about who I coach, because I say, well, did you get that homework thing done? Okay, you see, well, here's the thing. Well, what? And I go, just stop, because the answer is no. It's either yes or no. So you're saying no. So start with something. And that's why I say it's better to do less than you hope for than nothing at all. Start today, start tomorrow. And whether it's the gratitude journal or walking or exercise or drinking a quart of water for, every 50 pounds of weight you have, or whatever it is, but start immediately and you'll be amazed how fast you'll see results.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, David. And so I did put your website link in the chat. I'll also
thank you.
put the description at YouTube. And so just in closing, talk to us about the groups that you share with, because we're honored at Exceptional Connections.
Thank
Your
you.
friendship means a lot to me, and I'm grateful that I could call you and have you step in and speak to our community. You've done so 2 other times in the past, and so grateful for that. But I know that you you speak to larger groups and organizations. And so for anybody who's listening to this, how could they get a hold of you and share a little bit about the speaking opportunities that you love to be able to take advantage of?
Thanks, Cyndi. I know when I started 10 years ago, when I first did Exceptional Connections and the different things, I did probably every Rotary, Chamber, Lions, Kiwanis in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and would traipse around with my books in the trunk and drive up to Bellingham and to Canada and different things. And so now I pretty much exclusively do corporate events and conventions and annual meetings and conferences and things like that. And I typically get to be a keynote, which is really cool. So any opportunities that people are aware of in that space, you can always get me at david@thatgratitudeguy.com. And I really, really enjoy it. I do a lot of work for Boeing now. I do 1 or 2 talks a month for them because their engineers really need it. So that's kind of the corporate space. So, but always looking to impact larger groups of people. So anything where where there's going to be a large group of people that are looking for a speaker, please get a hold of me. I would very much appreciate the opportunity to talk to them about the opportunity, because that's how it's grown. It started small and it's gotten pretty big, which is really fantastic.
Well, that's
Thank you.
awesome. Well, thank you again for sharing with our community and for sharing with us today. And just in closing, I just want to remind everyone of a networking nugget that we didn't talk about today, but that David shared at our last event. The most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. And I think that's a beautiful way to end this conversation. Remember to make every connection an exceptional connection. Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
We'll be recording this and looking forward to being able to reconnect, David, and learn what you're up to. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thanks, you guys.